Good evening and welcome to the Monday, September 28th, 2020, 6 p.m. regular meeting of the Bell Garden City Council. The meeting will now come to order. Pursuant to Executive Order N2920, please be advised that members of the Bell Garden City Council will participate in today's meeting telephonically. Council members and staff are participating from remote locations. Members of the public may view and listen to the meeting live online through the city's website, as noted on the agenda. Conflict of interest recusal. If any agency member should have a conflict of interest virtually, please leave the room by turning off your video and muting yourself. You may still keep listening to the meeting. Tonight's Pledge of Allegiance will be led by our Chief of Police, Scott Fairfield.
Right hand over your heart. Repeat after me. I pledge allegiance
to the
flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Chief. City Clerk, will you please call roll of the City Council?
Yes, Mayor. Council members Acetuno,
Present.
Barcena,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Flores,
Present.
and Mayor Cortez.
Present. Moving on to closed session report. Will the City Attorney please give a report on the closed session items?
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. The City Council is now back in open session, having met in closed session to discuss item number 1, conference with labor negotiations pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6. The City Council received an update from outside legal counsel and no action was taken.
Thank you, City Attorney. City Manager, will you please introduce our public hearing item number 1?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Cortez. Public hearing is for a zoning code amendment. The Planning Commission is recommending that council approve this amendment and adopt an ordinance for several updates. I'll ask our Community Development Director, Gus Romo, to give the council a little more information at this time. Go ahead, Gus.
Yes, Mike. This is a zoning code amendment. Let me go ahead and start off with the presentation, if we could put it up.
One second, Gus. We're working on it.
Thank you. Okay, I'll go ahead and start. This particular zoning code amendment came before the council at the end of last year, but there are a couple of things that we needed to add on to it and bring it back at a later time. So it went back to the Planning Commission. Let me go ahead and go on to the next slide. This is what we call a code cleanup to streamline administrative procedures and just simplify and clarify the development standards for the sake of the general public and developers, and overall promote a more user-friendly zoning code. Every so many years, staff looks at what's happening and collects things that have been given to them by the public and the development community, puts them into policies before they go forward as zoning code amendments. And that's what what's been happening here over the years. So let's go on to the next slide. Specifically, this code amendment addresses 10 things. Here, we identify the definitions section. So we're cleaning up the L definitions and D definitions just to make it clear what those items mean. Residential zones are also being cleaned up so that we can identify everything within one matrix, as opposed to people going to different parts of the code. It's a lot harder when you try to find it in different locations. Same thing with the commercial and industrial zone matrix. Also updating them to make sure that everything's within one section. Next slide. Under Chapter 9.20, we're addressing the standards for residential condominiums. Under 938, we're addressing required parking and loading spaces. And under 944, trash enclosures are being clarified and also moved into the development standards matrix of each of the zones. We're also modifying the site plan review thresholds, adding the appeals language to various sections so that we're clear on what the appeals process is like. And then last, we're modifying the non-conforming section of the code to be clear as to the definition of non-conforming uses and structures. Next slide. So first, to begin, the definition section. We're looking at the definition of lot coverage under the L section. What the code currently does is it excludes the front yard setback from the definition of lot coverage. And lot coverage is really the entire building area that you can take up on a particular lot. So in most cities, the standard is based off the entire square footage of the lot. So people have a larger envelope. The fact that we have very small lots here in Bell Gardens makes this even harder for people to do a room addition because now they have a smaller envelope to go by. So we felt this is a lot more user friendly to the general public and to the development community, especially based on our small lots. So next slide. So in the residential section of the code, we're identifying a change in the lot width requirements for both the R2 and the R3 zones. The R1 already identifies this. So we're going from 60 feet to 50 feet. We're also identifying for corner lots, the idea that a corner lot should have a larger setback. So instead of being 50 feet, to be aesthetically pleasing and have that yard setback, you have a total of 60 feet that's being proposed for corner lots. Also, with regards to the height right now is a maximum of 35 feet for structures. What we're saying is that regardless of the story, whether it's 1 story, 2 story, 3 stories, it shouldn't make a difference. And what we've been encountering is that people will come in with a 3-story building, but it's no higher than 35 feet. So at the end of the day, it's still your maximum massing that we're taking into account. So we felt it'd be friendlier to just leave it at 35 feet. And whether they have 1 story underground or 3 stories or 2 stories, as long as the maximum height isn't extended or gone beyond, then we're fine with that. We're also adding references to the matrices, like I was saying, to make sure that we can find things in one location. This has to do with fences, walls and hedges, landscaping, and trash enclosures. And we're also adding design criteria for the screening of mechanical equipment and utilities, just to make it clearer, and identifying the design standards to regulate exterior treatment of buildings. So next. And here's that example I was talking about with the height. Here you have a 3-story structure and a 2-story structure. At the end of the day, it's no more than 35 feet that we're looking at. So somebody could have a 8-foot ceiling, somebody else could have a 12-foot ceiling. But again, we're just looking at the maximum height of the structure from the outside. Next. And again, with the residential zones, we're identifying the standards for the site plan review to be from 4 to 5 units. So for instance, right now, anything that's 4 or more units has to go to the Planning Commission. What we're saying is that anything with 5 or more units should go to the Planning Commission, and 4 or less can be done administratively. And this helps the development community get things done quicker. So it expedites the reviews. We're also looking at reducing the minimum requirement for common open space from 25% to 20%. The industry standard is 10 to 15%. So we're still higher than the industry standard, but again, we're trying to be more developer friendly and make it easier for somebody to build structures without having to take into account so much open space. Next. And under the commercial zones, we're asking to change the maximum allowed height of structures to no more than 60 feet, not stories. And again, it goes back to what we were talking about with the residential. As long as the maximum height is not exceeded, it doesn't really matter how many stories there are there. Next. And under Chapter 912, we're adding references. And again, this is similar to what we did with the residential zones, or what we're proposing to do is to put everything within one matrix to be easier to find. And again, same as the residential zones, we're identifying fences, walls, and hedges, landscaping and trash enclosures, design criteria for mechanical equipment, design standards for exterior treatment, and also development standards for lighting and wall-mounted equipment, which is especially important for non-residential zones. Next. And again, we're identifying here reduction of the common open space area from 25 to 20% for residential condominium projects. We want to make sure that it's consistent with also apartment projects. If we're saying apartment projects will be going down from 25 to 20%, it should be across the board for all multifamily projects. Next. Parking and loading, clarifying requirements for the expansion of residential uses. For instance, right now we say that if you have more than 250 square feet of addition, now you have to conform. If you have a 1-car garage, you have to add another car garage to make it a 2-car garage. Well, we think that's very restrictive. So in order to give people more ability to add on to their home to make improvements, we're going up to 350 square feet. Next. And the trash enclosure requirement, we're again just clarifying, explaining the requirements of when trash enclosures are required for residential projects, and just explaining the design criteria for how these trash enclosures ought to look. Next. And under the site plan review, as I was indicating earlier, we're changing the threshold. So we have 3 types of site plan reviews. So when somebody comes in with development proposals, they're looking at a type 1, type 2, and type 3. Type 1, example, a patio cover, a fence, signage. That can be done administratively over the counter. Sometimes it may take a day because we might have to go out there and look at the property. But for the most part, it's over the counter approval. Type 2 are your larger projects. And again, now we're saying 4 or less instead of 5 or more. I'm sorry, instead of saying 4 or more for the Planning Commission review. Tenant improvements, expansions of commercial or industrial projects, more than 3 signs proposed. All of these can be done administratively. They're still being looked at, being routed to the various departments for comments and conditions. But again, we're helping the development community by keeping them under the administrative review instead of having to go through a public hearing. And the type 3 is your larger projects. Now here we're going from 4 to 5 or more residential units. Also pertains to all new construction for commercial and industrial projects. Those will appear before the Planning Commission. Next. And the appeals process, again, we're identifying changes to each chapter to correspond with the site plan review chapter so that we're consistent about the appeals procedure. And this is both for ministerial and discretionary decisions. And the final slide, please. The non-conforming lots, uses, and structures chapter. We're going to be changing this to ensure that this chapter corresponds with the recommended amendments to the other chapters of the code. And again, this is for consistency purposes to make it easier to read and easier to find. Next slide. So the recommendation from the staff is to open the public hearing and then adopt the Planning Commission resolution that recommends the action of approval to the City Council, which is approval of the Zoning Code Amendment 2020-032 and adoption of Ordinance 893, amending the Bell Gardens Municipal Code, Title 9. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Gus. Before I open it up to public comment, is there any questions from the council on this item? Okay, hearing none, at this time I will go ahead and open the public hearing and public comment. City Clerk, is there anyone wishing to speak on this item?
There is none, Mayor.
Hey guys, I wanted to ask something about this real quick. My video just wasn't prompted early enough. Gus, where we're talking about residential zones and open spaces, I know that we are probably better than other cities, like you said, in comparison. Compared to other cities, we are a lot smaller, and the city already suffers from lack of green spaces. And the green spaces that we do have are not always accessible or, available for our residents. So I would like to stay with the 25 percentile. But before I request that, do you know what that looks like in square footage? Can you give me an example?
Sure. For instance, if you have, let's say, a 10,000 square foot lot, that would mean that 2,500 square feet would have to be open or common open space. So it reduces the envelope for construction.
So if I was building condominiums, I wouldn't have to, I would be reducing 5% of the total building structure.
25% of the total, but also taking into account that we don't count the setbacks for the common open space.
Mhm.
So in addition to the setbacks, we also have the common open space within that envelope. So
Okay.
you've got a lot more than the 25%.
A lot more. So I'm gonna, I still want to stick to the 25%. I think that I think everything else is very well compiled together. But again, like for instance, when the pandemic hit, we couldn't go to our parks, right? So we had to just use the space we have at home, and to just think that as more buildings come in, that the amount of space will be reduced. I don't feel that that's something that the community would benefit from. So I want to, I think everything else is phenomenal, but that one really does concern me, and I would want to keep it at 25.
Okay.
So my
And
motion would be to approve it with keeping the 25. And then one more thing, go ahead. Did you want to say something about that?
I was just going to say, and that could very well be a reason of why it was adopted that way to begin with, Mayor Pro Tem, because you do have small lots in the city. And at the end of the day, I understand, the whole southeast area is lacking open space.
Yeah. Thank you so much, guys. I wanted to ask
Mayor Pro Tem, can I
Yes.
ask you, it's Mike here, I just want to clarify. There's two sections where that open space was set to reduce from 25 to
For the
20.
multifamily ones.
Okay, so how about for just multifamily residential, and then also we have specific for residential condominiums, so.
That one, both of them.
Both of them,
Anything
okay.
that's, because I think just multifamily apply for 4 units and up. Yeah, right. So
Yep.
sorry, I thought it was
So both items, right?
for both items, please.
Okay,
And
thank you.
then moving on to the required parking loading spaces, just for clarification purposes, this is not for any new construction, right? It's only if someone wants to expand, let's say their kitchen or their living room, right?
That is correct, ma'am.
Okay. Just for clarification purposes, because I know that some people are going to be alarmed when they feel like, oh, so someone's going to come in, build new houses, and they won't provide us with parking. No, that's not it. It's just if you want to expand your kitchen right now and it's over a certain percentile, a certain square footage, you will also have to build new parking spaces. And that's really inconvenient at the moment. So thank you for taking care of that, Gus. So yes, those are my my inputs.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. So we have a motion on the floor by Mayor Pro Tem to amend, and that was what chapter?
For
Chapter 920?
Madam Mayor, can I interrupt? Should we
Yes.
open the public hearing first and then take motions?
Yes, you're right. Thank you, Councilmember Aceituno. So the public hearing is open at this time. So we'll put Mayor Pro Tem's motion on hold so we can go through the motions of public hearing. So City Clerk, do we have public comment for this?
We do not, Mayor.
Okay. So given that we don't have any public comment, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. And now we're going to go ahead and move on to the motion. So we do have a motion on the floor. If any of my other colleagues would like to ask any questions or make any other motions, this would be the appropriate time. Or to support the motion. Okay, hearing none, I would like to go ahead and move to approve the recommended, or to move to, give me 1 second. I would like to move to approve the zoning code amendment number 2020-032 and introduce ordinance number 893, amending the following sections of the Bell Gardens Municipal Code zoning. So if anyone would like to second my motion. And just as a reminder, there's two motions on the floor. So we'll take the first one. If anybody would like to second Mayor Pro Tem's motion, this would be the time. Hearing no second, that motion dies. I'll go ahead and now bring my motion to the floor if somebody wants to second.
I'll go ahead and second that. This is Councilmember Barcena.
Councilmember Barcena seconds that motion. I'll take it to a roll call vote. Councilmember Aceituno?
Yes.
Councilmember Barcena?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Flores?
no.
And then yes for myself as well, so that motion carries. Okay, City Manager, will you please introduce public hearing item number 2?
Thanks again, Mayor Cortez. The second public hearing item is amendment to the fiscal year 2021 CDBG program budget. So back when we were shuffling resources around in an attempt to balance the city's general fund budget, we identified $168,612 that could be used from CDBG money that was set for the Aquatic Center to fund some of our code enforcement program to keep that program at the consistent level as it was in previous fiscal years. While that was adopted by the council as part of the budget, the next step of it is we also have to adopt it or request approval to adopt it as part of the CDBG program budget, just to make sure we're in compliance with the program rules and regulations. So I'll turn it over to Community Development Director to add any additional comments.
No, I think you summed it up well, Mr. City Manager. At the end of the day, this was something that was budgeted for in the city's annual budget. So now we're just carrying this over to the CDBG budget.
Thank you, Gus. So at this time, I'm opening it up for my colleagues if there's any questions, comments, and I would just ask you to hold off your motions until after the public hearing. Okay, hearing none. At this time, I'll go ahead and open the public hearing and public comments. City Clerk, do we have anyone wishing to speak on this item?
There is nobody wishing to speak, Mayor.
Thank you. Hearing that we have no speakers, I will go ahead and close the public hearing, and now I'm going to open it up again for my colleagues. Is there any motions or comments? Mayor Pro Tem, I believe you're trying to comment. We can't hear you. Your microphone shows now. It wasn't showing before. Perhaps try unmuting it now. Okay, she left. We'll give her a couple minutes to come back on because I think she wants to say something. So while we wait for Mayor Pro Tem to come back onto the meeting, I'm going to go ahead. I believe she's on. Is she? Yes, she's on.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, awesome.
Mayor Pro Tem, did you have a comment for this particular item?
My audio went out, so did we do a motion for
No.
the second item?
No, we were waiting for you to come back on.
Okay. No, I'm good.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. So I'll go ahead and move with staff's recommendation that the City Council approve the amended CDBG program budget by adopting resolution number 2020-78. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mayor Pro Tem Flores, and I'll take this to a roll call vote. Councilmember Aceituno.
Yes.
Councilmember Barcena.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Flores.
Yes.
And yes for myself as well, so that motion carries 4-0. City Manager, can you please introduce public hearing item number 3?
Thanks again, Mayor Cortez. This is the third and final public hearing item. This is for zoning code amendments that would allow for electronic display signs in certain areas of the city. As the council may remember, the Family Health Care Center here on the corner of Gage and Garfield requested to partially modify their existing sign so that they can have an electronic display. They have a COVID testing center, and it would be helpful for them to display that information on a sign that's more easy for people to see as they drive by. We've gone through and made recommended amendments. I'll turn it over to our Community Development Director to give you some more detail on that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So zoning code amendment 2020-50, ordinance 909, is, as our city manager was stating, a request to expand the area where LED signs are allowed. So if we can go on to the next slide. The specific chapter is 9.40. It has to do with locational requirements for M1 zoned parcels to allow the installation of electronic display signs. Currently, there's only a certain area that allows them, and by amending this chapter, we would expand that area to include the area where the clinic currently is located. Next slide. So back in 2015, the City Council amended this chapter by adopting Ordinance 867. Under that ordinance, they defined electronic display signs, and they required a conditional use permit in the C4 and M1 zones only. So you're still limited to where you can have them. They also added locational requirements and sign standards for digital displays. Next slide. So currently, this is the area where they're allowed. It's the M1 zone over by Florence and Scout, and we can go on to the next slide. Also the C4 zone. So everything you see in red also is allowed as long as you meet the criteria for location, which is every 500 feet, but also frontages that are at least 180 feet wide. And in this case, we're proposing to reduce that to 130 feet. Next slide. And this is the particular area we're looking to expand it to. So it's over where the center is located on Garfield Avenue. Next slide. So ultimately, that's the only change that would happen is we would expand the M1 area that can allow LED signs, and we would decrease the total frontage from 180 to 130 feet to allow the signage. What would then happen is the applicants in this area could come in, submit a conditional use permit, and take that before the city's planning commission for approval. So we recommend that you open a public hearing and then adopt a planning commission resolution which recommends the approval of the zoning code amendment and ordinance 909. That concludes my report.
Thank you, guys. City Council, do you have any questions? And again, I ask for you to hold your motions until after the public hearing. Okay, hearing none, I will go ahead and open the public hearing and public comments. City Clerk, is there anyone wishing to speak on this item?
There is nobody wishing to speak, Mayor.
Thank you, City Clerk. Given that we have no speakers, I will go ahead and close the public hearing. And now I'm opening it up for motions and comments from the council.
Madam Mayor, I have a question for staff.
Go ahead, council member.
Gus, so just to clarify, this, even if we were to approve it today, if the clinic there is interested in moving forward and putting a sign there, they would have to go through the planning commission meeting and all that, and residents, like for instance, the Viñas Las Campanas, the housing project next door, will have an opportunity to have any objections or something like that?
That's correct, sir. They would have to submit their plans identifying the sign that they're looking to put up. And then we would do notification to all the property owners within 300 feet and hold a public hearing.
No further questions.
Thank you, council member. I would like to go ahead and move for the city council to approve zoning code amendment number 2020-050 and introduce the ordinance number 909, amending Bell Gardens Municipal Code Title 9 zoning and planning regulations, chapter 9.40, signs, section 9.40.055, electronic display signs matrix, by revising the location requirements for M1 zoned parcels for electronic display signs. May I have a second?
I'll go ahead and second.
Second by Mayor Pro Tem Flores. I'll take this to a roll call vote. Councilmember Aceituno.
Yes.
Councilmember Barcena.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Flores.
Yes.
And yes for myself as well. So that motion carries 4-0. Thank you, guys. We're now moving on to public participation on agenda items only. City Clerk, do we have any speakers?
We do not have any speakers, Mayor, for this item.
Thank Thank you. Seeing that we have none, I'll go ahead and close public participation. City Manager, we're moving on to your report.
Thank you, Mayor Cortez. I just have three items I'd like to update the council on briefly. You'll notice agenda item number 8 is slurry seal road improvements. And I just want to make a note. Sometimes I think about this and haven't really expressed it regarding the pavement condition in the city of Bell Gardens. So our current pavement condition as it's measured by the experts out there is at somewhere between a 68 or a 70. The last city that I worked for, a larger city, more affluent city with potentially more resources, their index was at about 63. And so the road conditions here in Bell Gardens are about 10% better than the previous agency that I worked for. And, I noticed that in working with the city. And I just wanted to comment on this agenda item number 8, the slurry seal. These are the types of activities that have been approved by the council over the years in the past and going forward, hopefully, that help to continue with those improvements and to really maintain the roads and keep them in a good state of repair. If you don't do these types of slurry seal activities, an otherwise good road can become bad in a short amount of time. So we don't talk about that in a lot of detail. So I wanted to make that point. Also, I wanted to comment, a couple council members, including the Mayor Pro Tem, expressed some concern on our CDBG rental assistance program. We've got to follow the CDBG guidelines, and in some instances, we've been surprised to learn that some landlords are unwilling to fill out the paperwork that's necessary for us to actually make the payment on behalf of the renter. And so our community development staff and our recreation community services staff have been working with the CDBG contacts to figure out a way to make sure that these residents that are supposed to receive this rental assistance are able to receive it. If it turns out we're not able to work through something with CDBG, we will come back to the council to see if there's use of some local monies potentially to get around that requirement. But we're working on that, and that issue's come up a few times. The third and final item, I just wanted to report to the council that we randomly were selected for a Standard & Poor's credit rating review. This normally wouldn't be the best time you'd want a credit rating agency for government agencies to come in and look at your city with the COVID financial condition and with the casino being closed down due to COVID concerns. But the interim admin services director, Tony Rainey, and myself spent a lot of time working with Standard & Poor's, expressing to them all of the work that the council has been doing, all of the work that the Cardroom JPA has been doing, all of the work that the employee groups have been doing to try to shore up the finances of the city during this critical financial time through these labor negotiations and through cutting services, being smarter with resources. And so happy to report that our credit rating was maintained, and our outlook also was maintained with a stable outlook. And so that's important for the city going forward. Gives some confidence if the city were to go out and issue bonds or debt for any purposes that we still have that we're still a good credit out there and people would be willing to loan money to the city. So thanks to the staff, thanks to the council, thanks to all the stakeholders that have helped to maintain such a credit rating in such a tough time. That's all I have, Mayor Cortez.
Thank you, City Manager. We're doing a press release for our credit score.
Yes, we should have one out here in the next day or two.
Thank you, City Manager. Okay, we're moving on to consent calendar. Does any member of the council wish to pull any item for separate discussion? Hearing none, I'll go ahead and move to approve the consent calendar. May I have a second?
Second.
I believe Councilor Barcenas came in first, but if not, we'll review the audio after.
Yeah,
I'll go ahead and.
I seconded that. That was me, Councilmember Barcena. Thank you.
Yes. Okay, so we have a first, we have a second. I'll go ahead and take this to a roll call. Councilmember Aceituno.
Yes.
Councilmember Barcena.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes.
And yes for myself as well. So the motion carries for consent calendar. Moving on to our first discussion item number 10. Discussion item number 11.
Thank you, Mayor Cortez. So this will be discussion item number 9. This is the policy for installation of parking T markings in residential areas. So Just as a reminder, the city had a parking study done. You've heard about this a number of times. We spent money, hired professionals, come out and do statistical analysis, determine the best ways to help alleviate the parking issues in the city of Bell Gardens. One of the items was T markings. We brought that on to council and demonstrated at the city street that was selected that T markings would result in a significant reduction in the number of parking spaces in the example street that we used. That was even with the T markings being of a shorter size than what the normal standard would be. And so the council directed staff to potentially create a policy much like the speed hump, speed bump policy that allows for individual streets and neighborhoods, if they so desire, to go and solicit the opinion of their fellow neighbors to determine whether or not they want T markings or not and are willing to potentially lose some parking spaces. And so the Public Works Director and her staff prepared such a policy, took it to the Traffic and Safety Commission. It was approved and it's here before you today. I'll turn it over to Chao Vu, our Public Works Director, to provide some additional information.
Thank you, Mike. You just about summed it up. I wanted to add that one of the criteria that we set was to have a minimum of 18 feet, which is not typical. It's typically 20 feet, but we like to allow 18 feet to allow for parking. We also want to note that the criteria required would mean surveys, a field inventory of existing parking, field measurements, and scaled striping plans, as well as some costs that will be involved in the T installation with additional police enforcement as well. So that is called out in the policy as well, and that's before you today for acceptance, and that it's an opportunity for, like Mike mentioned, for residents to take this upon themselves and talk to their neighbors, because this is possible. We have examples of how this policy can be implemented throughout the city. So if residents are motivated enough, they can talk to their neighbors, and if they feel strongly about it, it can pass the 50+1% mark. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Director. Any questions from the council, comments?
I do have a comment. I just want to thank staff for helping us get to this point where we're actually going to be implementing something in regards to the T markings, which has been a very hot topic here in the city. I want to make sure that if we do approve this today, that we have a little bit of an outreach effort so that our residents can be aware, and feel free to comment on that if you guys already have something planned, because I think it's important to make sure that the residents know that this is now an option if it does pass. But again, thank you all for your work.
Councilmember Barsina and Director Vu. So at a minimum, we'll post on social media, making sure that the public understands that this item was approved. And then we'll work with the Public Works Director as far as doing a form of an outreach, just to make sure that neighborhoods know that this is available out there, in addition to posting it on the website for perpetuity as well.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, staff. I know it's frustrating for our community for us to resort possibly to a policy instead of just making the decision ourselves and having it be as like a mass scale initiative for the entire city. But we do understand that there is a possible reduction in parking when we do T markings. And that's why we're putting it out to the community for it to be street by street. We do want to give that opportunity the same way we have a policy for speed humps now. Is the same way that we are intending to do this. We also sent out a survey for something else. So our efforts are there. And I think there was definite value added from the study. It wasn't wasted dollars. I think we received useful information and it helps for the transparency of our city as well, to see what's really going on with our community prior to us making any decisions. So I do want to thank staff for putting this together. And also, I would like to agree with Councilmember Barsina about the outreach. So thank you, Mike, for looking into that, and as well as Director Chu. Boo. Anybody else have any comments?
Hey guys, so thank you so much, Director Vu and Mike. I know that it's been feels like a battle, right? That it's been going on for some time now. There's a huge widespread with the issues with parking. We knew it. We spent the money to tell us what we knew about the 40K. We spent about 40K to tell us that we didn't have parking. The goal was to just implement them after that, right? Unfortunately, that's not the way that things went. And now we are going to be implementing a policy in which, you know, if you have the option, if you have the support on your street, you will be able to implement the T marking. For me, I feel redundant, you know, that I continue to say the same thing, that obviously we sent out a survey. A lot of people were in favor of it. We are aware of the loss of parking spaces, but there's always that counter argument, well, we're already losing parking because people are double parking either way. Right? So at least now you have that peace of mind that there is parking and no one's double parking it. But then again, you know, that's already a war. I'm sorry, it was a battle. It was fought. It's over. Now we're here trying to move forward. So for anybody listening in the community, if you know anybody on your street who would like this, please let them know that you now have the option, but you have to come together as a street. Unfortunately, there wasn't enough support to just implement them. And we do understand that this isn't the solution for every street, right? It might be the solution for Quinn, but maybe not the solution for Specht, right? So either way, I just want to thank everybody for their efforts. It's been a very, very long time. Up until now, we still don't have a solution. So this feels closer to having a solution by producing options. So with that said, thank you so much, staff, for what you're doing. And again, I do think that it's important that everybody, you know, finds out that this is an option now.
Okay. If there's any other comments, I would like to go ahead and move to adopt the attached policy for installation of parking Ts in residential areas. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Councilmember Aceituna, and I'll take this to a roll call vote. Councilmember Aceituna.
Yes.
Councilmember Barcena.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Flores.
Yes.
And yes for myself as well. So this motion carries 4-0. City Manager, moving on to the next discussion item.
Thanks again, Mayor Cortez. The next two items, items 10 and 11, are essentially the same, but they impact two different of our labor bargaining groups, one being the Public Works Employee Association and one being the Bell Garden City Employees Association. What we're requesting approval from the council are similar agreements to what the council approved through an agreement with the Police Officer Association. The purpose of both of these agreements is to close out previous bargaining sessions that go back to July 1st of 2019, and then also going forward to achieve cash savings during this time that the casinos closed down and those revenues are not coming in. And as with the agreement from the Police Officer Association, both bargaining units have agreed to 7.5% salary reductions, elimination of their normal annual potential leave cash outs in exchange for 6 hours per pay period of comp time that can't be cashed out prior to July 1st of next year, or could also be used in accordance with leave policies. And again, the purpose here is really to concessions from these bargaining units to get cash savings for the city. With that, for both items 10 and 11, staff is seeking approval from the council on these side letter agreements. Be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the council?
Yeah, Mike, for the purposes of clarification for our residents, can you break down what this means?
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem. So if you're an employee in one of these bargaining units, basically what happens is your pay will be reduced by 7.5%. So if you make $20 an hour, your pay would be reduced by about, sorry, I should have picked an easier number there. About $1.50 an hour, 7.5%. So the city would not pay you for 80 hours of work. You'll work 80 hours. We'll pay you for the equivalent of about 76 hours of actual work. In exchange for that, since we don't have to pay you, what the city will provide will be comp time in a comp time bank. So you would be able to use that time as time off, or potentially in the next fiscal year, those comp time amounts would be cashed out. What that does for the city is save cash at a time where cash is king, with the casino being shut down, hopefully temporarily, but currently it's definitely not open, and so it provides cash savings to the city. Also, the elimination of leave cash outs, normally on an annual basis, subject to a bunch of rules that have been bargained for. Employees may cash out any unused vacation or sick leave, again, subject to rules. And that's cash that's out the door from the city to the employees. And so the employees in both of these side letter agreements, as with the POA, are agreeing to forego that possibility. So again, that saves a few $100,000 for the city by not allowing that. Another key component of these deals is that they are for 6-month period of time. These were requested by the city employees for the most part. And with all bargaining, it's, sometimes there's luck of the draw. We will be back bargaining with these employee groups, including the POA, in about 4 to 5 months. And at that point, we'll be reevaluating the financial condition of the city. If the casino's open, not open, what are the other financial impacts of COVID? And these labor agreements, they may look better, they may look worse. At that point in time, we'd have to go through the bargaining process. But short explanation: 7.5% pay cut saves the city cash. We give some comp time in exchange for it, so the person either gets some time off, or they potentially could have it cashed out at a later time when we would expect to be in a better cash position.
So much, Mike. I just wanted to get you to clarify that for the residents, because I think that there's a misconception up there that we are still spending excessively, right? And we need to let them know that we are not. And for those who don't know what the POA is, that's the Police Officers Association. And the other, what term did you use? Well, the other labor groups are just city employees, to make it, simpler. So that can mean public works, that can mean community development, including the city manager standing on your screen. So, so that's what that means for the city of Bell Gardens. Another question I received is, are they going to be compensated for the time that they lost in monetary checks in 6 months? Or is it just going to be like that, just the standard, and we're going to give them the comp time?
So Mayor Pro Tem, one of two things can happen. If an employee so chooses, in accordance with leave provisions, they could take the time off. So they'll get paid 6 hours less, and let's say 2 weeks from now, they request to leave 6 hours early, on a Monday. They would be allowed to do that, or they would be allowed to potentially cash out that time, but not before July 1st of next year. So even though the term for the agreement is 6 months, we're basically guaranteeing that there wouldn't be any cash out the door from those comp times until at least after July 1st. So it really, at a minimum, people either can use the time if we're not able to allow that due to work requirements, then the time would potentially be cashed out in about after July 1st. So it'd be beyond the 6 month period of time. And just to clarify, even I guess to help with some of the questions, is the labor negotiation process is very specific. It follows along in accordance with law. And if these bargaining units were not to agree to these concessions, we potentially find ourselves in sort of a 3 to 4 month period of time where we argue by having mediators and such involved, and it would be 3 to 4 months time where we would potentially receive no other cash savings. And so we're thankful that we're able to get these concession bargainings done.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, Mike. I really appreciate the clarification.
Thank you, City Manager. I do want to thank staff for helping us reach this state with all of our different labor groups. But I do want to thank our labor groups for coming to the table, having these hard conversations and helping out our city by coming to an agreement, as opposed to, having to go to an impasse or different other options that exist down the road. I think it's honorable for our different labor groups to recognize that we are in a dire state, and for them to agree to this. Thank you so much. I think as council, we're not in the business of trying to cheat our employees, if that's one way to refer to it. We are going to do everything possible to go back to status quo. We're doing everything that's in our powers to help with the conversation with the casino and revenue sources, etc. But we do want to thank our labor groups for coming to the table and agreeing. Just much appreciation also for all the work that you do day in and day out, and we will bounce back. Bell Gardens will bounce back. Does the council have any other comments? Hearing none, I'll go ahead and move for the city council to adopt resolution number 2020-80 that authorizes the city manager to execute the side letter of agreement. May I have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a second. I'll take this to a roll call vote. Councilmember Aceituno,
Yes.
Councilmember Barcena,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem,
Yes.
and yes for myself as well, so that motion carries. City manager, discussion item number 11.
Thank you, Mayor Cortez. So item number 11, as I mentioned at the start of number 10, same discussion points, just the Public Works Employees Association, no new information to add. So staff would recommend that the council adopt resolution 2020-81 for this side letter agreement as well. Thank you.
Any questions from the council? Okay, hearing none, I'll go ahead and move to adopt resolution number 2020-81 and approve the tentatively agreed upon side letter of agreement with the Bell Gardens Public Work Employees Association. May I have a second?
I'll second.
I'll second.
Okay, I'll take this to a roll call vote. Councilmember Aceituno,
Yes.
Councilmember Barcena,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Flores,
Yes.
and yes for myself as well, so that motion carries. And that ends our discussion items. We're moving on now to public participation on a non-agenda. City Clerk, I believe we have one call and an email, so we'll start with the call.
Okay, that is correct. I'll go ahead and call Gabriel Ramos.
Hi. Hello?
Hello, is this Gabriel Ramos?
Yeah, hi, how are you?
Fine, how are you?
Good, good.
Okay, my name is Jane Halstead, City Clerk for the City of Bell Gardens. The reason for my call is before you can state your comments before the council tonight by phone.
Oh, okay.
So go ahead and announce your name and state your comments. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Okay, hi, my name is Gabriel Ramos. Long-time listener, first-time caller. I've been a resident for about 20 years, over 20 years. I've been living here all my life. And my issues that I have here, I want to address to City Council. So I know there's a lot of going on, and the last meeting was, all due respect, a total disaster. We need to make sure everyone works together, all 4 of you, everyone in City Hall, especially City Council. Because right here in my street, Emo Street has 2 potholes that hasn't been fixed. They put like cones around it, and that's one issue there. We also have across the city broken lights, unsafe driving roads. We have homelessness, break-ins. Someone tried to break in back in March into my house. I spoke to Marco about that. We have petty crime here and there, and it's just a lot of stuff going around that we need to focus on. And instead of having council members making accusations on Facebook and tagging friends, or making TikToks, or mocking City Council, or instead of going to the news, or instead of ambushing voters and three-way calls with Jennifer. You know, we should all work together and stop attacking one another, stop fighting, that type of stuff. We need to work together to represent us, the people of Bell Gardens. It shouldn't be drama going back and forth. It shouldn't be me. It's what I want. It's me. It's a group thing. There's no I in team. It's we. And yeah, that's all I wanted to say because it's really getting annoying. It's getting old, and we need to start getting. We all need to work together because it's really getting old. So we need to make sure we get to work, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Have a nice evening.
Thank you. City Manager, can we please look into those potholes on Email Street and then provide an answer back to Mr. Gabriel?
Yes, Mayor Cortez. I'd actually, just, if I have Director Vu on the line still, I'll pass on that. Yes, Mayor Cortez. We'll get back to Ms. Ramos.
Thank you so much. And now we're moving on to the emails. So, Honorable City Council elected officials, my name is Chris Chai. I'm writing to express my strong opposition to Proposition 16. Proposition 16 uses race to judge the qualifications of applicants to universities, to jobs, etc. There's a textbook definition of racism, pure and simple. If it is passed, how far will we slide down this slippery, dangerous slope? What's next? Set racial quota for elected positions, set racial quota for NBA and NFL, set racial quota for TV anchors, set racial quota for movies and songs. Please join us to vote no against Proposition 16 from a very concerned citizen. Okay, the next one is, Dear City Council elected officials, my name is Josh Seymour. I'd like to let the City Council know that we should not pass Proposition 16 this November. Proposition 16 is exactly what we saw on TV. The protesters on streets are protesting about inequality and injustice, singles out Asians to punish them for hard working, making the best of life is simply evil. This country is a great land of opportunity for everyone. The people have said no to SCA 5 in 2014, and we need to say no again this November to stop this racist proposition from becoming law. Please read my comments, Josh. And the last email is, good evening, Mayor, Council, and City Administration. This is a follow-up to my public comment from 2 weeks ago. I was dismayed at the behavior of current and former city elected officials during the previous council meeting. All city residents and stakeholders deserve better than petty politics. As a 40 resident, I remind you that there is never a right time to harmfully lash out at each other during a public meeting. You are held at a professional standard. Please conduct yourself accordingly. Members of the current council, I ask you that out of respect, please turn on your camera while speaking. The city provides you with electronics allowance along with the city council meeting stipend. There is no reason why your camera should be off while speaking. Moving forward, thank you, Chief Fairfield, for immediately reaching out and having an in-person meeting within a day. There is continued progress to be made concerning my grievances. I appreciate you took this time to hear those. Mayor and City Manager, if and when a resident reports an issue to your city website using the Talk to Us section, can there please be an email or phone follow-up with the resident who has reported the issue? I have filled out multiple Talk to Us and have never gotten a verbal or written response of delivery. I know these are challenging times, but please follow up with residents who attempt to make contact with you. Nothing is worse than reaching out and those concerns falling on deaf ears. Thank you for your time, Mark Alamillo. Okay, that goes ahead and concludes our email comments. And now we'll go ahead and close public participation. Moving on to City Council member comments. Councilmember Aceituno.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to take this opportunity to thank the volunteers that participated at this past weekend's food drive. Thank you for dedicating your time back to those less fortunate families in our community. Thank you. Good night.
Councilmember Barcena.
Yeah, I want to echo on what Mr. Aceituno said. Thank you to all the volunteers. Thank you to the council that showed up and represented their city. Everyone showed up, so that's something that I feel proud about. So thank you guys. Thank you to staff, of course, and the volunteers. And I want to do a brief comment in regards to showing the video on these meetings. This is the first meeting that I am not showing my face. I am having technical difficulties with my phone, but you know, I think it's great that you guys are expressing what you feel should be done with this new format meetings that we're having virtually. I tend to agree. I think it's a great practice to try to tune in with video, and I will continue to do that. Hopefully by next meeting I can sort out my issue. But thank you for keeping us on check. I think it's really important to have the feedback of our community at these meetings. And that's all I got. Thank you everyone for a great meeting today.
Thank you, Councilmember Barcena. Mayor Pro Tem Flores.
Good evening, everybody. I just want to thank everybody who's been working arduously these last couple of weeks. I know the director of Parks and Rec really had her plate full to organize the food bank and the ones that are going to continue after that. So thank you so much, Roseanne. City manager, thank you so much for working with our labor negotiators. Recently and suddenly we lost our director of finance, and thankfully Mike has a background in finance and he stepped in, and I couldn't have think of anyone better that I could have wanted during these times. So thank you so much, Mike, for everything that you're doing. And to everybody that's being really involved and calling and emailing, we see you, we hear you. To Mr. Gabriel, I can't believe you've had potholes on your street for that long. My apologies. That's my son. Sorry about that. But yeah, thank you everybody for tuning in. And if there was any point in our previous council meeting in which we disappointed you, I'm terribly sorry and I apologize for that. It's difficult to be here sometimes because sometimes you're led with your passion, and the way in which you convey your message isn't always the best outcome. And I'm as transparent as they come. I don't sit here and pretend to know what I don't know. I ask questions and I try to be as informed as I can for my community. So thank you to everyone for being patient with me and for supporting me through this, and for being active, because it's not easy, but we're here every day no matter what. So thank you so much, guys, and I hope you guys have a good evening and see you at the next council meeting.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. As far as my comments go, first, I would like to thank our Parks and Recreation staff, our Public Works, our Bell Gardens Police Department, our City Hall staff for allowing us to put together a food drive, massive food drive this past weekend on Saturday. We were able to distribute 3,000 rations of food, meaning there was multiple boxes that every single resident was able to take home, which included cheese, chicken, non-perishables, pasta. I would also like to thank all of the volunteers who came out. It was arduous labor from early morning, 7 in the morning, all the way till about 3:30, I think is when we finally ended. And I just want to thank everyone for coming out and helping our communities. We did home deliveries, people picked up, even our Parks and Recs director was delivering to our home. So that was very beautiful to see that we came together to make this happen for our community. It was a very, very successful event. But I do want to thank Michael Flood from the LA Food Bank, who allowed us to bring this to Bell Gardens. I met Mr. Flood at a different food drive, and I expressed to him the need to bring this to Bell Gardens, that we were reaching out to the food bank. And thanks through that communication, he worked with our Parks and Recs director to bring this to Bell Gardens. So thank you again, Roseanne, and our Parks and Rec staff for allowing us to make this happen. Following, in Mayor Pro Tem's footsteps, I think an apology is owed to our community for our behavior in the last meeting, and I think it's very big for us to recognize that it was inappropriate. So we will continue one foot at a time, one step at a time, to redeem ourselves and to bring our community nothing but the best. And we do need to work collectively as council to bring the best to Bell Gardens. And I think Saturday was an effort of that, to bring everything that our residents need, because we are doing a lot. But I just hope that our community notices, and we will continue to work for you. Every single issue that you've hit us with, it's not falling to deaf ears, and you'll see some more announcements coming soon. But with that, I do want to end our meeting in memory of someone. So if we can please share the image. So our meeting today is dedicated to Daisy Jimenez, and we will end in her memory. Daisy Jimenez was born in El Salvador. She moved to the city of Bell Gardens and lived here for more than 20 years. She was married to Ernesto Jimenez in 2005, and they have a 15-year-old daughter, Daisy Jimenez. She lived on Ludo Street next door to the Neighborhood Youth Center, where her daughter attended the Creative Kids Time program when she was 3 years old. Daisy was well known in the community for her generosity and kind heart. She was always available to lend a hand to her neighbors and offered food to those who were in need. After work, she would visit the neighborhood youth center and started what she called the committee, a group of moms who would come and have coffee with their kids while their kids played at the neighborhood youth center. During our fall Friendsgiving event, she would encourage all the ladies to bring a dish and help serve the neighborhood kids. Daisy had a heart of gold and was a valuable member to our community. She will be truly missed by all those who knew her and call her a friend. Thank you, Ms. Jimenez, and to the Jimenez family for the many years of labor provided to our Bell Gardens families. We are with you in your pain, and we are here if you need anything. So we're ending in memory of Ms. Jimenez. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and conclude this meeting at 7:07.